Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our belated council meeting. Any apologies for absence?
I have apologies, Provost, from Councillor Baxter and the three religious representatives, Mr Bourne, Mr Hayes and Mrs Harkness.
Thank you. Order of business.
Provost, from the email that was sent out this morning, you'll see that we have substituted the council minutes in the minute volume. That's the minutes of the 16th of December, and tabled paper copies have been put around the table. I'd also like to point out that there is an omission from the Sedern that Councillor Muirhead was in fact at the meeting. And also I'd like to point out that there's an additional item of business on the council agenda, which is item 20, European System of Accounts, Impact on Newbattle Project, and that's a report by the Head of Property and Facilities Management.
Thank you. If there are any declarations of interest, either now or during the meeting, please indicate. Thank you. Come now to the minutes of meetings for approval. The Midlothian Council meeting on the 16th of December as amended. Okay, thank you. For noting the Cabinet meeting of the 18th of November 2014, 18th of November 2014 and the 16th of December 2014. Planning Committee, 18th of November 2014. General Purposes Committee, 11th of November. Local Review Body, 25th of November. Performance Review and Scrutiny Committee, 25th of November and the 26th of November. The Audit Committee, 9th of December 2014. Safer Communities Board, 2nd of December 2014. Accepted? Okay, thank you. We now have a presentation by Joan Houghton, Assessor and Electoral Registration Officer of the Lothian Valuation Joint Board. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The presentation is really just to give a very brief overview on individual electoral registration. I presume you all know all about it, having received probably numerous letters from me over the past 5 months. So, really, the reason for introducing an individual electoral registration was perhaps not for any particular great reasons in Scotland. It was mainly to tackle fraud. And there isn't really any great evidence of fraud existing within Scotland, but across England and Wales, this was seen to be an issue. Not a big issue, but it became the perception of voters really through media exchanges, etc. So we've been preparing for this introduction for some period of time, and individual electoral registration was introduced on the 19th of September in Scotland. That date might be very familiar to you, the day after the referendum. It was supposed to be introduced at the beginning of June, but it was delayed because of the referendum coming into place. England did, however, go ahead with the introduction in June, and therefore they're kind of further along with the process than we actually are, although we are all really having an IER register. When we complete on the 27th of February, the whole of Britain will effectively be under the IER legislation. So, previously, as you would know, we used to send out in August every year canvas forms to the head of the household, and the head of the household would send it back saying, no change here, or the dad of people on, etc. And you needed to submit that return in paper format. Well, that's pretty old-fashioned now. So we now submit your individual electoral registration online. So it goes through a government digital service, and we now have to have personal identifiers to combat fraud. So the personal identifiers that you need to supply when you go online, or even if you submit a paper form, are your date of birth and your national insurance number. Now, whether you submit this in paper format to us and we fill in the information, or you submit it down the government digital service line, It all has to go through the government digital service to be matched with DWP records to verify that you are who you say you are. Now, there are some people who don't know their date of birth, believe it or not, and there are some people, or many more people, that don't actually have a national insurance number. So if you do not have the supplied information, the electoral registration officer has the power to ask for other additional information, such as passport, driving licence, generally photographic ID that can match you to who you say you are. So, what did it mean in Midlothian? At the beginning of the canvass, we sent out confirmation letters. That was really what we were saying, a letter to the household, to the electors in Midlothian that had actually passed through the government digital service before anything was done by the elector. So at the very start, we sent out 61,623 confirmation letters to the electors. That meant that 90% of the electorate in Midlothian are actually confirmed. They're fine, they're now IER registered, need to do nothing further. Household inquiry forms were sent out to the households where there are no electors currently on the electoral register. Now, that was sent out to 2,343 households on the 15th of December. First reminders were sent thereafter. There was only 16% return from that first issue and 7% return from the next issue. So out of all the household inquiry forms, we actually only ended up with an 18.5% return. So you've got a lot of work to do in your constituents to make sure that the others that do not return actually try and make the return. So, in addition to that, where we knew an elector's name, but it hadn't passed through the government digital service to be confirmed, we sent what was called an invitation to register. We use abbreviations, as I suppose you all do in your work, so we kind of call them ITRs and HEFs, etc. So it kind of makes life a bit easier than saying invitation to register. But it was sent out to 6,758 electors. Now, we had a better return rate from this. First reminders were sent to 4,101 and second reminders to 2,967. So from the first issue, we got a 39% return. And from the second issue, a 27% return. So overall, out of those people who had not managed to confirm with the government digital service, we've actually managed to get responses from 56%. So that's good. Because what we don't want are the unconfirmed electors further down the line. Now, some of the issues that are now coming out of this. 287 electors have absent votes and who have not been confirmed. Now, they will be sent a letter in March to tell them that they will now have lost their absent vote. So that's been a postal vote or a proxy vote. So you'll have 287 possibly unhappy electors out there. To make sure that we are getting as much of a return as possible, and it's our statutory duty, we are actually having to carry out personal doorstep canvassing where we have non-returns. So to the empty households, to individual electors who have not responded, we have visited 7,935 households. A lot of houses to kind of cover. We now have full-time canvassers. They're not permanent canvassers. They're taken on in this transition period to see how things work. But we now have, as I say, full-time canvassers. You might have seen them around the streets with their black jackets and their white ERO signs all over them. Hopefully you'll treat them with kindness. The next thing that happened in the process was just on Friday past. It was called a household notification letter. Now, the decision to send those letters wasn't originally in the landscape. This was brought in because of the poor response rates that were actually achieved down in England. They finished their canvass and published their register on the 1st of December. We don't actually finish until the 27th of February. But we decided that it would be a good idea to send out those notification letters, and I think some people have, or you should all have received them. Let's hope they all had the correct information on them. If they don't, I'm sure you'll be in touch. But we sent those notification letters out to 35,639 households in Midlothian on Friday, and we've been inundated with phone calls, emails, and applications have been getting submitted online through the government digital service, which is all excellent. Because what we've got to remember is this register, we're trying to make it as accurate as possible, ready for the general election. We're always working towards an election rather than actually the first register published. But the deadlines that we're looking for are obviously the 27th of February is coming up, but we obviously have to cut off quite early to be able to actually download the data and publish this. So we might not make all the applications that have been received at the present moment in time and are in the process, are working away along the process in time for that register. But what the Electoral Commission is saying, and the various different electoral bodies, is that the canvass is now more or less an ongoing annual affair. We were constantly updating the names. And so the main issue is we're trying to reach as, a full compliance of processing all applications that will be received by the poll card issue date. So I think that's the kind of major thing. That's where the electors know. I know that you all sit here waiting for the 27th of February register, but the electorate really is what matters most to us, and it will be the poll card issue that will matter to them. Okay, so from today, what does it mean for electors in Midlothian? And what can you do? So we need to encourage the response to the household notification letters. If they're inaccurate, if there's extra people living in a household, please encourage your constituents. The idea of the HNL is really to try and reach them before the poll card issue so that we're not clogging up the system at the poll card issue. So it's almost like a double dealing of it. You have this whole household notification letter as a first urge, and then the poll card will be the next urge. We're working with universities, etc., and I know you don't have any universities here, but you will have students in further education living and in various different parts around Midlothian and living in elsewhere. And we need to make sure they're seen as one of the hard-to-reach groups, and we're working with all sorts of universities to make contact through social media, etc., to urge them to register. We will be issuing removal of postal vote proxy letters around the 16th of March. So that's the date where the 287 electors will be told that they will no longer be able to vote by post. We're also going to write to electors at the end of March who made errors in submitting postal vote identifiers at the European Union elections in 2014. Again, that's a statutory duty. It should be very, very few because they've all had various different notifications already and probably already submitted fresh identifiers. So hopefully that will be a bit of a non-event, at least we hope it is. All new electors will be required to be verified in the UK through the government digital service. Now, I can't stress this enough. It takes time. And so no longer can you submit your application and it's suddenly you can be put on the register the next day. It just will not happen. You have to be either confirmed through the government digital service, and when we get the information back from that, if it's not matched, it takes us time to write out to you to get the further identifiers. So my kind of plea here, and I'll say it again in probably the next couple of slides, don't leave things to the last minute. Make sure that the applications do arrive in good time for us to be able to go through the entire process. The other thing that's a bit disappointing, when we remove somebody from the register, we now need two pieces of information. We used to just take a death notice and that was it. We now need to have a second piece of confirmation. But we try our best to do that without actually going back to the household that is just in the process of grieving through a lost relative. So we do what we can. So as I mentioned, the poll cards. That's after this household notification letter, poll cards are going to be issued around the 31st of March, 1st of April, and so that's when the elector will suddenly know whether they're really on the register or not, and that's the one that really matters to us. We have the standard poll card that goes out to the general electorate. You have the postal poll cards, proxy poll cards, and postal proxy poll cards. I don't know how familiar you are with all of those different variations. But for the first time ever, there will now be an unconfirmed elector's poll card. And this is really to tell people who have not been confirmed through the digital service, therefore who are not IER registered, that they cannot vote by post or proxy unless they are actually confirmed through the verification process. And even your proxy, if you're applying for a proxy vote, both you and your proxy need to be IER registered. So this is very important. So if you leave the proxy vote to the last minute, or the postal vote to the last minute, and we find you're not IER registered, bear in mind your registration date's already passed. So get them in quickly, please. So the postal ballot pack, that's the next stage in the process that the elector looks out for, and they will be going out around the 21st of April. Now, bear in mind, this is to the standing list postal voters. We're in the hands of the printers for a lot of this, and they didn't demand the information so early that generally it's only the people who are on the standing list that get their postal votes in the first tranche, as opposed to those who apply further down the line. Now, we tend to get swamped with telephone calls. I applied for my postal vote last week and I don't have it. Well, they're not going to get it. The system just won't allow, the processes that we've got to go through just won't allow it. So please encourage your electorate to apply in very good time. So the registration cut-off date is the 20th of April at midnight. So try where you can to get the applications in as quickly as possible. Everything takes time. So I've mentioned the government digital service. I've mentioned us having to follow up on further identifiers. So just bear that in mind. Postal vote and postal proxy applications, the cut-off is the 21st of April at 5 p.m. So keep that in mind as well. Handy slides to take away with you so that you can let your electorate know. There will be plenty of advertising. The Electoral Commission are charged with doing the major publicity for the election, and we will be doing our own publicity in addition to that. So I think we need to make sure that we have as much information processed in time, and bear in mind what we're trying to reach is to get the list properly sent out to the polling stations in time for the electors to be properly marked off and vote. New proxy vote applications, the cut-off is the 28th of April at 5 p.m. And I've said already, both the elector and the proxy must be IER confirmed. Emergency proxy votes, well, they caused absolute mayhem at the referendum. Let's hope they're a bit better this time. I think everybody suddenly thought because they wanted an emergency proxy, they could get one. The legislation is very clear here. Whatever the emergency is, it must have occurred after the 28th of April at 5 p.m. Other than that, you must have a normal proxy. So it gives you there the reasons why you can get an emergency proxy. Medical illness, disability, but as I say, it must happen after 5 p.m. on the 28th. The main one that seems to be cropped up that has never really been used before is the occupation, service or employment, and it does cause problems. What you've got to bear in mind is when we receive these emergency proxy applications, we've got to notify the RO, the returning officer, and the polling station. The elector must be notified and the proxy. So it's a lot of people that we've got to have full details on to be able to get that information to them, because the polling station needs to update their register so that the person isn't voting incorrectly or the wrong person's voting. So it does take time. I'm sad to say that there are people who don't get it because they don't meet their requirement, which sometimes they've had a disability for a long period of time. They cannot get it under an emergency proxy situation. And it does take us a good bit of time, especially on the day, because you can do this any time till 5 p.m. on the day of the election, an emergency proxy, but it becomes virtually impossible on the day. And bear in mind, they must have been IER confirmed. So those emergency proxies, we're still checking to make sure that they are IER confirmed. So it's not definitely all that easy. So what I want you to do, encourage electors to register online as soon as possible. It's the quickest way to do it, online. And if they can't do it online, don't have access to a computer, they can actually phone us and we can actually do it online for them. You can do it online for them as long as they're there. Don't do it for them without them there. Encourage postal and proxy applications to be made early. Respond immediately to all correspondence communicated from the ERO. It's very important. People tend to kind of they got a lot of junk mail now. I can understand it and put it in the bin, but try to encourage them to respond if there is a requirement to respond. The thing I must emphasise to you, bear in mind that any applications to vote or to register will now have personal identifiers on them. So they're going to have your electorate's date of birth and national insurance numbers. That's confidential information. Make sure you do not hold on to it. Give the voter confidence in the IER process. Yes, you need to submit identifiers now, but it is for good reason. It means nobody can really steal your vote in the same way as it could have been possible, although, as I say, the evidence of it was not great in Scotland. But they can register online now, so it is easier, and I want you to try and transmit that to the elector. It should be benefiting the electorate. There's a large number of people now registering online rather than submitting paper applications. So it is being seen as good news. And do remember that postal voters whose identifiers fail will receive a letter advising them of the failure after the election. So hopefully that will be very low numbers if we all act in unison to help the electorate achieve a good election and positive voting circumstances. And thank you for inviting me. I hope I've not taken up too much of your time and it's been all easily understood. Happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, just thank you for the presentation. Clearly it is an important issue and we're all very keen to see the message getting out to encourage as many of our residents as possible to make sure they are registered to vote and to take part in the democratic process. I can certainly confirm, having done the online registration, how easy and simple and straightforward it was. It took literally a couple of minutes and got my letter through yesterday confirming that that's now done. I suppose my question is, obviously there are thousands of people on the register who are on it because they've been on it before, they've not done the online registration. Do they all essentially go on as unconfirmed until the point that they are confirmed? And is there some point where everybody's going to have to become a confirmed voter? I'm thinking more for most people who actually just turn up and vote at the polling station, where you're saying it's not, certainly for the immediate term, going to make much in the way of a difference.
Yeah, as I said, you know, Midlothian only had 10% of the electorate unconfirmed. And, you know, we're whittling away at that, but we've now added a lot of them as confirmed electors. Unconfirmed electors will not lose their vote. Now, at the present moment in time, the legislation is stating that the first time they will be taken off the register will be the 1st of December 2016. Now, there is a possibility that that will be brought forward to the 1st of December 2015. But they will definitely remain on the register for the general election and for the subsequent elections until they're removed. When they are removed, they will receive a letter advising them of that. The only difference really at the present moment in time is they cannot apply for a postal vote or a proxy vote unless they are IER registered.
Anyone else? Councillor Beattie.
Thank you, Provost. Joan, could I ask, I've had a lot of questions about this change of occupation, service or employment, and that's been introduced for the first time, I understand. And people are asking for what exactly does that mean? Could you give us a couple of examples, please?
Yeah, well, it was there for the referendum, hence why we seem to be kind of inundated with applications along this line. I mean, really, what the government has actually realised is we're a very mobile population nowadays. And you can be asked to jump on a plane to fly to wherever it is, or any mode of transport, but you could actually be taken out of Scotland or away from where you could reasonably be expected to be at your polling station. It could be you're called to your HQ in London to attend a meeting that you must attend, and therefore that would be acceptable. It can be anything at all. The ones where I have a bit of feeling that they're not properly... is when we had a group of people at the referendum who wanted an emergency proxy because they were going to an agricultural fair down in Wales somewhere. Now, they must have known about that more than before the emergency cut-off time, but sometimes it's actually hard to make a judgment call as to when did they actually become aware that they had to be aware, and that's what sometimes we have to make a judgment call as to whether the explanation that we receive is bona fide.
Okay, well, a lot of work went into making sure a lot of people got registered that weren't registered before for the referendum. So why has this been brought forward now when we have to start re-registering these people but the work was put in to get them registered in the first place?
Yeah, we after the referendum we have actually got probably the fullest register we've ever had. It was a great way of getting 16 and 17-year-olds onto the register, and as you probably know, we're kind of the Scottish Government are now looking at extending the franchise for all Scottish elections. But the reason it was introduced, and it was agreed across all the jurisdictions that individual electoral registration was the way forward. One, it was to combat this perception of fraud, and secondly, instead of making one person of the household responsible, we all have to take our own responsibility. It seems to be more democratic that we make our own representations to be registered rather than have somebody else do it for us. So it's about trying to get the electorate involved at a very early stage and keep them involved.
Yeah, but it just seems strange that we knew there was a general election coming up. Why did we not just leave this until after that? Okay, Councillor Muirhead.
Yeah, I'm kind of going to take an opportunity, given that you're here, to ask you a question which is not directly related to the individual electoral registration, but some of the methods that you adopt. Obviously, nowadays, the electoral register isn't just used for voting purposes, it's used for a whole host of things, including credit checks and things like that. And what's good about the way it's done now is we get monthly updates. But one of the problems I've come across recently is where that gap, that period before you publish the register, where you take a 2 or 3 month kind of break in the monthly registrations. Given the kind of technology we've got nowadays, is that still necessary? I understand that there's the canvass and things like that going on, but what's the justification for that period? Because I know that it does give some people who are applying for credit difficulties when they don't appear in the register, even if they've registered months beforehand. They're not appearing, and I'm talking about an example from middle of October, who isn't on the register until the 27th of February.
Okay. The second letter sitting on my desk at the present moment in time, ready to send. The reason, it's actually in legislation. It's 1983 legislation. It's been there, obviously, since that time. It's because the register is in a state of flux at that point in time, where there's a host of removals, host of applications. In reality, it did come back down to the household canvass because registration was seen mainly done at the annual canvass. Whether it is removed further down the line with IER as we move forward with how we vote and how we register and all the various different aspects of it. But it's written in the legislation that for the month of the publication of the register and for the 2 months before, we do not publish a monthly update. Now, bear in mind, the electoral register, in my view, and the majority of people's view, should be used for electoral registration purposes.
Okay. Now, John, thank you very much for your attendance today. Okay, I don't know how many of you noticed, but I don't have the Chief Executive sitting beside me today, Kenneth Laurie, and I'm pleased to say I have Mr Blair instead, because the Chief Executive is on a holiday. We now move to item 6, questions for the Leader, and none have been received. We now on to item 7. And it's a notice of motion by Councillor Young.
Thanks, Provost. So this relates to the village of Ford and the speed limit through it, and it's an issue that I've discussed with officers on a number of occasions leading up to placing the motion before Council today, and understand the advice and the position officers are in, and so I feel that this is an issue for Council to now make its view known one way or the other, to give guidance to officers on. The background of the motion is that the residents within the village of Ford have serious and long-standing concerns about the speed limit through the village. They believe it's inappropriately high. The background of that, and I'm certain that, that Ricky and others will be able to tell you the absolute facts on it, but my understanding is that the national guidelines for speed limits on the category of road through Ford state that 30 miles an hour rather than 40 should be the norm in villages where appropriate, but the issue is that Ford is unable in those guidelines to be classified as a village to do with it not meeting the requisite length of settlement nor the number of houses. But in my view, and I think probably in a common sense view, when you enter Ford, you're clearly entering a village. It says, welcome to Ford, but then there's a sign saying 40. If that's not unique in my ward, it's certainly very rare. The other villages like that, Duerton, Edgehead, Whitehill Village and Newland Rig, I understand they're all 30 mile an hour limits, so Ford really is the exception. I understand that part of the national guidelines given by the Scottish Government are to ensure a consistent road network, and so my view really is that Ford is something of an anomaly, and I understand the guidelines, and by and large they fit, but always within national guidelines there'll be anomalies that don't fit, and it's certainly within the powers of Council to agree in principle that the speed limit through Ford be reduced from 40 to 30, and to authorise the Director of Resources to initiate the necessary statutory process to do that. I'm happy to discuss the issue at greater length, but I've tried to set out in the motion in as kind of fair and balanced a way as I can. Obviously, my view is that the speed limit should be reduced in line with what residents want, which is from 40 to 30. Certainly had a lot of people write to me and let me know their views. I can tell you that it's a unanimous view of the people who've been in contact with me, and certainly I think that within national guidelines there's always things that don't quite fit, and I would hope that Council's minded today to solve that anomaly and give the residents of Ford a speed limit of 30 in line with what they want. Thank you, Provost.
Councillor Beattie, I've just noticed this photograph that popped up on my iPad. You take a very good photograph of with the people of Ford, I think, is that? Yes. Okay. So maybe I'll pass it on to the advertiser for publication. I've just come up a photograph that came up there. No like it, no? Oh, too bad. Okay. Anyone else?
Sorry, yeah, I'd just like to second that. I just absolutely lost as to where you're sitting playing with an iPad during the council meeting, Provost. Seems rather bizarre and embarrassing that you're sitting playing with. In fact, may I say childish. There's a serious issue to be heard here, and that is that the Ford situation and the residents in Ford have asked their local councillor and their new local councillor to see if there's something they can do here. And he's quite simply putting forward asking Council to support looking at ways to see if we can change national guidelines to help the people in Ford to do that. Now, I can only assume that what was attempted there is that there have been other attempts. We're quite happy and would have probably supported any other attempts. Anything that improves road safety in any of our villages we'd all be quite happy to do. So we hope that we can get this through, because it then allows for this council to decide whether it wants it to be 30 or 40, because if the officers of this council are stuck with national guidelines that say if a village length is less than X amount, it should remain 40, then the officers didn't have an option open to them. If that's changed, then the officers can make a judgment for themselves whether they want to leave that open for them.
The iPad I'm playing with was provided by Midlothian Council for our use at these meetings. Councillor Rosie.
Yeah, certainly there's not a lot. There's quite most of that I would agree with what's in this. But I've got an amendment that I want to put forward. Can I put that forward, and then we can discuss? Somebody be able to hand that round the members. Just. Yeah, as I say, generally, I mean, a lot of it there I would support, and I think it's right. Just to put a bit of context around why this amendment's come forward, is towards the end of last year, Councillor Beater actually approached me as the portfolio holder about this issue, which she has been working on for some considerable time. It was that time I thought, well, we've got a 20 mile an hour one coming up before Council in December, let's not mix it up, and I'd like to have a look at it myself. So we did that, we went to the new year, and I said I was supportive of it, but I'd like to be aware, that, like to know that all the local ward members were in agreement with this proposal, which it now looks like that is the case. It's just a few sort of changes to it I'm looking at, and that's we've got to remove the second B, because I think it's not going to be easy to make a one-size-fits-all for every village and community.
Sorry, in notes or resolves, sir?
Pardon?
The B in notes, believes or resolves, which B?
The second one. It's the second B, because there's about 3 or 4 Bs. There's about 3 Bs, and it's the second B. It's to remove the second B from it. Yeah. Then that's the one where it actually refers to the council making its view clear. I think it would be a bit difficult for us to cover all the eventualities, and I think it would be better that we treat each case on its merits, as some may not warrant changing. The other one is on the change the second C. It's a small point, but I just think it makes it look better. Is instead of saying a village, to change that to this village, which pertains to the one we're talking about, which is the Ford village. And on the last part, I think we should be looking at what Councillor Beattie brought to my attention was that the speed limit should be from Crichton Road down through the village, because there's a 30 up to there, and then we go to 40, and then 30 again as you enter the village if this went forward. So it was just to make it clear where the 30 should go right through the village. And as I say, it's just, I think we should recognise the efforts of the villagers for the long campaign, and also Councillor Beattie and their MSP Colin Beattie in achieving this. That's the amendment I want to put forward.
Councillor Thompson.
I'll be brief. Yeah, just second Councillor Rose's amendment. I think, yeah, there clearly has been a long-standing commitment to trying to address the issues here. There's been a long-standing campaign by those in the local community, and Councillor Beattie and Colin Beattie MSP. I think it's welcome when others join such campaigns, but I'll just be brief in that sense and second in the amendment.
Councillor Young, you happy to accept the amendment?
No, at the moment I need clarification on the final point. I mean, I don't care whose name's on it. The villagers deserve a safe road. You can put Alex Salmon's name on it if you like. But the issue I'm confused about is in the resolves, because resolves A and B are following advice from the monitoring officer, I'm keen that we don't put anything in there that confuses anything. Are you, Councillor Rosie, with your amendment, are you seeking to remove anything in the final section, Council resolves to, and then A and B, or are you adding your paragraph about Councillor Beattie as an additional, which would become a C?
It would be in the A. Council agrees to A, and then we leave in B that we authorise the Director of Resources to initiate the necessary process.
So I won't accept that amendment because this is the language that has come to me from the monitoring officer, but I'm happy to, if you want to quickly offer another amendment that notes the cross-party support for this and the efforts of the villagers, I'd be happy to accept something like that, but I'm not prepared to change A or B because the wording in that has been sent to and advised by the monitoring officer.
Yeah, but as he said, my amendment isn't correct. Is there anything wrong with the amendment?
The issue to which Councillor Young refers is the reason why is really the words "in principle" that were put in, and again, that I think, in fairness to Councillor Young, he was wanting to go straight to the root of the problem and change the speed limit. There is, however, a statutory process that the Council must follow to allow consultation to take account of any representations received before reaching a final decision. And that's why we managed to persuade Councillor Young to put in the words "to agree in principle" to the introduction of the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. And I notice that the words "in principle" are not there in your amendment, Councillor Rosie.
Well, if we add the "in principle," then that would be acceptable.
That would be acceptable to me, yes. Obviously, I'll defer to Councillor Young for his.
Look, this is just a bit of a. We don't want to get tied up in this because I don't want A and B changed. This idea also of the introduction of the 30 from Crichton Road. I mean, the intention, for to be clear to officers, is that from as you enter the 40-mile-an-hour, so going from Dalkeith, for example, to Ward's Path Head, as you enter the village of Ford, you enter a 40-mile-an-hour zone. You then go through that. You don't leave that 40-mile-an-hour zone until you're up the hill at Crichton Road. So, in actual fact, there's nothing in the amendment that you've offered that changes it. For the purposes of getting this through and to give villagers the speed limit they deserve, I would be very happy for an amendment that Council welcomes the efforts of the ward councillors from all parties and the efforts of residents. I don't care about any of that, but I don't want to confuse the issue. Why don't you offer an amendment C to welcome the efforts of local ward representatives from all parties? Why don't you do something like that constructively, and let's get this through.
No, it's still that doesn't. We're trying to clarify it here by saying the Crichton Road. If it's not clear, then they won't know where to put the 30-mile-an-hour sign, and you end up going from a 40. You could end up with an area where you're of 40 miles. So can we just? I just want to leave the amendment as it stands, with the wording obviously as we say "in principle" added in there. I want the amendment to stand.
Okay, I don't accept the amendment.
Okay then. Anybody else on that one? No.
Okay. Rob, it's just a question, maybe information from Councillor Rosie or Councillor Beattie. If this motion had been up here today, when was what you're putting forward going to come to the Council? It obviously was to come into this Council. So if you've had this since December, when are you actually going to bring it forward?
I didn't say we had it from December. I said we had the 20-mile-an-hour one in December. I said that we'd be better to deal with that, and then we'll deal with this 30-mile-an-hour one, and I would have a chance to have a look at the situation up there for myself. I know the area, but obviously I've not been there for a while, so I wanted to see that. And that's why it was not until just about a few weeks ago that I actually was able to say that I could support this and move forward, which wouldn't have been time to get it before this Council.
Okay, we have
sorry,
a
Provost,
motion. Excuse me.
Provost, sorry.
No, I don't think...
Can I have a follow-up to that? I mean,
Well, I don't think so, no.
Sorry?
I don't think so. Yes, your question on it.
I've got a supplementary.
Point of order, Provost. Can we ask for advice from the officer? Ricky, as the motion stands, Council resolves to agree in principle to the introduction of a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit through the village of Ford. Would your understanding of that be up to Crichton Road already? Is it necessary, the addition that's been in, or do you understand Council's view to be that from entering the first set of signs at Welcome to Ford, going south, that would be a 30-mile-an-hour limit until you got to Crichton Road?
There are existing 40-mile-an-hour signs, as you're well aware. When I've been in discussions regarding the speed limit within Ford, what the guidelines talk about is a specific length, and that's 500 metres, and it's so that the driver makes that perceived change from a higher speed down to a lower speed. So where the existing 40s are, I'm not actually sure. So I would have to go back to my road safety team so that they could look and see what was the most sensible. If you were asking me without that advice, I would suggest that Crichton Road would be a sensible termination point for the 30, coming through Ford, down the hill into Ford, and then there'd be a suitable location thereafter.
Okay, so it sounds as if the amendment as offered is unnecessary. So once again, I would not accept that.
I'm still wanting to ask a supplementary. I'm asking for some advice on that.
Who are you asking it to? I'm saying, who are you asking it to?
Thanks very much. The supplementary, well, it would to be because it's in the rules. The supplementary was my first question to you was, just so I remember, was that if this hadn't come up as a motion today, when were you going to bring what you're putting forward? Well, I'm just asking the question. If it hadn't come up today, you have a week's notice to put a motion into the council, so you didn't need to put it forward as an amendment. You could have had this in last week. You've had it all that time since the end of last year. He said December, I think, but whenever it was. So when were you actually going to bring this forward and raise this matter at the council?
I think I've already explained it wasn't until January that I actually had another meeting with Councillor Beattie, and I was able then to see the location of where the 30-mile-an-hour signs were proposed. And then, as I said at the time, and I had said to her that I'd like it to be the three ward councillors in agreement that this is what should happen. And it would have been better had we all had a discussion beforehand. And maybe, you know, sorry, if you just hold a second, and maybe if Councillor Young had actually spoken to me as a portfolio holder, we could have probably arranged that and let them know what was in process.
On a point of order, because that's important, I emailed both of my ward colleagues, Councillor Beattie and Councillor De Vink. I emailed the administration and the SNP group office to ask to be put in contact with Councillor Beattie on more than one occasion in order to discuss this in a constructive way many days ago, 2 weeks probably, something like that. No response was forthcoming from Lisa Beattie. Councillor De Vink generously agreed that he would support the motion, so I think it's disingenuous to suggest that I've been anything other than constructive. My concerns are getting the speed limit to the correct level for the residents of Ford. I'm surprised that it's been such a ding-dong. As I say, I don't really care whose name you put on it. I'm quite happy to note that this has been something that's been of ongoing concern. The issue is I'm taking action now with this motion. I'm wanting it through for the people of Ford. Right? We've taken advice from the officers who've been generous with their time before the motion came. Ricky's been clear that the understanding is that it would be up to Crichton Road, or that would be a sensible point. The amendment that you offer isn't necessary. Why don't you just offer, if you want to offer a political amendment that says that Councillor Beattie's been involved in this, I don't care, I'm quite happy to accept that, but why don't you just offer it as a resolve C, Council welcomes, you know, the efforts of Councillor Beattie, De Vink and Young. I don't care, you know, let's just get this done, but let's stop dancing around about it.
Right, we're going to stop dancing around about it now, and we'll now move to the vote on this. For the motion put forward by Councillor Young, please show. Those for the amendment with the words included in principle added, please show. Amendment is carried. We move to item number 7B, notice of motion from Councillor Russell. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost. I bring this issue to the Council today because of the impact that the new psychoactive substances, or so-called legal highs, are having on the health of many of our young people. This issue has been debated long by many organisations. By this particular council, the Safer Communities Board discussed this, and the Scottish Parliament had a good debate and produced a research report in January of this year. Westminster Government set up a panel in October 2013, which has reported on October last year, and many recommendations were agreed by the Government, but nothing has been put in motion as far as I'm aware. While I do understand the complexities surrounding legal highs and the problems facing the legislators in drawing out a framework to deal with the various families of chemicals involved, the Misuse of Drugs Act of 1971 is the most important weapon in the country's armour, and this should be used. All the agencies in the field of drug control are working hard to gain evidence and producing training and educational tools to try and expose the danger of these legal highs. And while I applaud their work and that of the government and local authority, trade and standards and police officers, we are still faced with deaths and people being admitted to psychiatric hospitals. The problem of head shops selling legal highs are growing apace. These shops are now in the High Street, making them very accessible. We have one in Dalkeith High Street. It's called Vapour Out Limited, and our trade and standards and police officers are paying regular visits. However, there's not a lot they can do within the guidelines, given that these legal highs are not for human consumption. I've spoken to Horizon Group, who are an organisation set up to assist recovering alcoholics and drug users, and they're angry about this shop because they're obviously working with people that are trying to recover from drugs and looking at this obviously shop making it easier to get. They've kindly agreed to join me in a protest outside the shop, along with some kinship carers who obviously have caring for grandchildren because of their parents' addiction to drugs. That is I would say, a short-term move. Obviously, what I'm moving today is something that's long-term. We also continue to hold protests as the communities come together to stop this shop selling these substances. There are reams of paperwork that I have read through and lots of reports on this matter, but no real action as yet. So it must be made clear to the government that they must use the powers of the Misuse of Drug Act 1971 to rid us of these mind-destroying cocktail of chemicals. I've only touched on some of the issues here today, and I've kept my contribution short, as I'm sure other members have opinions on this matter. But I trust there's some cross-party support, and I so move this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Pottinger.
The first thing I wanted to say on the legal highs is basically the misnomer. They're definitely highs, but I would never ever call them legal. I would never ever legitimate this kind of highly addictive substances being ready available. We all know about the effects of addictions, and social workers got many a tale to tell on the addictive substances that have traumatised and ruined many family lives. Now these addictive substances are branded on our high streets: Bliss, Clockwork Orange, Mary Jane, all come in very nice, colourful packages, that are combinations of many herbal and plant and substances to give you that quick buzz. Obviously trying to mirror the effects of ecstasy and cannabis and cocaine and that's why they're called illegal, because they're not these class of drugs. They're just morally repugnant for our society, and it's morally repugnant to have them so available. And yes, national action has to be taken to overcome it, because it's not an easy question to overcome. It's such a shift in target. As soon as one gets banned, another one pops up on the marketplace. And the ones that are getting banned are the ones that are getting tested, thoroughly tested, about their psychotic and the stimulant effect, or the sedative effect, and the term they call name downers, or the hallucinogenics and psychedelic type drugs as well that are out there. Now, a lot of these people, when they get admitted to hospital, are actually getting admitted for poisoning. And how difficult is it to deal with people when they don't exactly know what they've taken? And a lot of these substances, when they're mixed with alcohol, become doubly dangerous. And a lot of times these so-called legal highs are taken at a function where alcohol is available, or an event. So the combination of them with alcohol can be even more disastrous. And yes, it's right that we should be moving to have these basically licensed kind of legislation, so that they become less readily available, and actually have to maybe get some kind of form of approval to dispense them, rather than the other way around, dispensing them and then wait for them to be banned.
Councillor Thompson.
Thanks, Provost. There's a slight amendment. I did discuss it with Councillor Russell. It's not in any way to change, be clear on that, not in any way to change the substance of what's being proposed by Councillor Russell and Councillor Pottinger. It is just a slight tidy-up, because the motion refers to demanding UK Government starts the process of legislation. The process has kind of started, so it's really to put the emphasis more to speeding up as opposed to starting. And obviously, I think we recognise the difficulties around some of the issues in keeping up with the ever-moving feast of new and creative solutions that are found to overcome where substances do become banned. I welcome the contributions from Councillor Russell and Pottinger, and perhaps we did have a very good debate on this, with some very, very detailed information at the Safer Communities Board, and certainly contributions from Councillor Russell and Pottinger would have been very welcome at that meeting, had the Labour Group taken up the 2 spaces that they have available to participate in that process. That's all I'm going to say on that. But we do have a situation where there's an ever-moving feast and a changing landscape of what is available. We know the Home Office in December 2013 appointed an expert panel to begin looking at how to consider tackling the issue of new psychoactive substances, and so far they've actually banned 350. But as we know, the chemistry changes, the definitions change, and they managed to move it out with the list that's banned. Definitions of the groups of substances are continuing to be updated under Misuse of Drugs Act, so it's possibly not moving as fast as any of us would want to see, but we have to recognise there is some work happening. The use of consumer protection legislation also, while useful, is so far limited to what we can do, and I think it certainly is absolutely appropriate that this Council makes that demand of the UK Government to speed up the introduction, which, I mean, I have to say in fairness, they have said that it's something they want to do. They've just been a bit slow in doing it. The report on the expert group was published in October last year, and I would certainly have hoped that we might have been able to see at least something starting to come forward by this point about the intention of the introduction of legislation, but so far there's been silence on that. I think anything that does get introduced has to be aware of the unintended consequences, because while there are clearly some of these substances which are specifically manufactured for the uses that you wouldn't want them to be used for, there's a danger of sometimes catching other substances which contain a chemical that are, for purely legitimate reasons, available in the shop. So I can understand how it is a complex substance. But also beyond the chemical makeups, and I think with the NPS it's tended to be the chemistry that's been the regulating factor, but we're also seeing new synthetic cannabinoids where they're looking at the impact on the brain and brain functions rather than just the chemical function. So I think there's a whole host of areas here that we do need to look at. I think we are all in agreement here, and as I say, the amendment is very much just a tweak about the emphasis as opposed to anything else. So hopefully that can be agreed, because it's certainly none of us want to see these substances available and causing further damage over and above that we've already seen happening in our communities.
Councillor Constable.
Thank you, Provost. The subject of NPS, as it was called, came up at community planning last Thursday. Chief Inspector Simpson and Superintendent Angus McInnes both spoke on the subject. And the substances being used are normal things like bath salts and potpourri. And I would welcome legislation to restrict it, but it's going to have to be framed very carefully, because people are always one step ahead and they could find a use for anything.
Okay. Anyone else? Oh. Are you happy to accept the amendment, Councillor Russell?
Thank you, Provost. Yes, I obviously take the amendment in the spirit that it's been given. I'm happy to take out paragraph 3 in my own amendment, but I do still want to keep in the last couple of sentences, which the Midlothian Council calls upon the UK Government to classify new psychoactive substances as banned substances under the Misuse of Drug Act 1971. I do want to keep that in.
Councillor Muirhead.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that Margaret has accepted that. I think whatever happens here, it's got to take a concerted effort. No about any one level of government. But what is clear, though, is, as Owen has said, the Conservative coalition government has been very slow to act on this issue. The legislation is made for a different time, and it is hopelessly out of date in respect of dealing with this kind of drugs issues. And that in itself hampers local authorities from acting in the way they should, because they didn't have the backup of the law. The government had opted out of the European Commission proposals for the regulation and the directive on NPSs, and instead, as Owen mentioned, commissioned a review of the issue, which did come out in October, and it is unfortunate that they haven't been able to progress that in that timescale, given the potential impact that it's got in our communities. So I'm glad that the amendment's been accepted, recognising the fact that there has been some progress, albeit far too slow.
Okay, we're now happy to accept the motion as amended by Councillor Thompson and retaining the last sentence by Councillor Russell. Okay, thank you. Item number 7C, a notice of motion by Councillor Montgomery.
Thanks, Provost. I was hoping this wouldn't be a contentious motion. It's really just to try and get the repairs issue at Beeslack sorted out. As the motion says, the school's been in operation for, it's actually their 30th birthday this year, and there are actually been celebrations to commemorate that. But I think for whatever reason, the repairs that are needing carried out to the roof haven't actually happened. As it says in the motion, the school parent council and I think the head teacher, although it's more the parent council, have been trying to get this sorted out since June last year. I mean, the copies of the emails are here if anybody wants to have a look at them. And they're not really making very much progress. I had a walk around the school last Thursday, and the position is at the moment is that the music corridor, and you'll know when you were at Beeslack, the music corridor, which is the top corridor, the carpet's all over the place in terms of the water there. There's buckets lying about catching the water, and the roof tiles a number of them are down, and a number of them are ready to go. If you go to the drama and the dance studio, there's lighting in the ceiling, which is obviously for studio lighting, which is where there's electric cables, and the roof tiles are down there as well, and there's water access in there as well, which is actually very dangerous, and the school's not really been able to use that. If you go to the gym hall, there's about 4 different parts of the gym hall where the water's coming in, and the water goes to the roof. The gym hall, the same as the dance studio, the roof, the ceiling is actually the roof of the... There's no another part of the building above it, if you know what I mean. It's actually the top roof. There's 4 areas there where the floors are actually warped, and the youngsters can't really play in those areas. There was a 5-a-side game going on Thursday when I was there, and it was really quite restricted because they couldn't get around the sides and play the ball off the wall and different things. So it's really not the best of situations. As I say, I've tried to make the motion non-contentious. I think it would be helpful if we could get this through. I've spoke to officers regarding this, and they actually, you know, I think they understand that the repairs are needed. I think what they were really looking for was a green light in terms of possibly the lifetime of the school or whatever was going to be happening with it. And if that can be happening, this could actually go ahead and get the repairs done. The Parent Council have really tried, or Parents Association, sorry, have tried no to make this too contentious or heavily political, and neither am I. I'm really just asking that, you know, after this has been going on for nearly a year now, the repairs needing carried out there. It is dangerous and it is going to get worse. The water doesn't improve if it's actually accessing a building. And I think if we can get this sorted out, it would be a nice present for their 30th birthday. And let's get this moving and get the repairs done.
Councillor Imrie.
Yeah, Provost, second the motion and reserve my position to speak if there's going to be a debate.
Councillor Rosie.
Yeah, as Councillor Montgomery has said, I don't think there's a lot we would disagree with on it. It's just I've got an amendment to put in. If we could just put the amendment in, and it should be circulated round. As I say, it's just, I think we've got to accept that some of the, you know, that over the last 4 years, that £554,000 has been spent on maintenance and repairs on Beeslack, which I think shows a commitment to the school. We recognise that the importance of maintaining the school estate in providing a quality education establishment, and we understand that the initial repairs to the roof at Beeslack are already scheduled, and notes that further required works are going to be included in the 2015-16 capital budget to do whatever necessary repairs are required for the school.
Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, I'll second it. I mean, I can certainly, as Councillor Montgomery says, I know the school well. I can remember leaks from when I was there. I think there's clearly a number of issues, and as the building gets older, sometimes these come up over and over. I think it's encouraging that the work is obviously to stop the leaks, but I know that certainly previously when work was done to stop leaks, it suddenly appeared somewhere else. So there is an element of a moving feast, and it's useful that the wider, larger scale works that are required will be happening. Obviously that needs to be done at a time that's sensible, given the movement of school pupils around the building. But I think the outcome here, I would hope, is exactly what Councillor Montgomery is asking for.
Okay, well, I have to say that I worked in the building trade most of my life, and this deterioration of buildings doesn't happen within a couple of years. It takes a period of time and neglect of maintenance to these buildings that causes it in the first place. Are we all finished on that motion? Councillor Bennett.
I wasn't going to take part in this because I don't know Beeslack School. But the gist of the motion, as I see it, is that Councillor Montgomery and Councillor Imley's put forward this motion on the back of discussions with Beeslack Parents Association. Now, if you accept the amendment, you're taking out the concerns of the Beeslack Parents Association, and I didn't think that's an amendment at all. It's just totally different from what the motion says, because the motion is it's quite clear that since June 2014, Beeslack Parents Association have been in correspondence with Education and Maintenance. You're taking that out altogether. That's the gist of the motion.
Okay, we have the motion and we have an amendment.
I did reserve my position because I didn't know what the debate was going to be. But just to say, you know, I probably anticipated there'd be an amendment. It's an unfortunate amendment because it actually takes the gist out of what Councillor Montgomery and myself were trying to put forward. I mean, the bit about it's going to be included in the 2015-16 budget, that's all that needs to be said in reply to the motion. But the motion could have gone ahead in principle. The money is going to be put in the budget for it. It's in there, and we get on and do the work. But what you're not acknowledging is the efforts that have been made by lay people to try and get the school to be better. And that's the difficulty. You take the amendment, and you actually cut out everything that's been said with regard to the problems that the Beaslake Parents Association have recognised themselves and have written to officials in this council. Now, they never got back a letter saying, oh, it's okay, it's going to be in the 2015-16 budget, so you don't need to do anything else. That's why the motion's in here today, because there was inaction by this council to do the work, and that's why I think the motion as it stands should be accepted by everybody. I would really urge that, you know, I acknowledge that there's been money spent on the school. Nobody's not acknowledging there's been money spent on the school. But the fabric of the building should be wind and watertight. That's all what's been asked for in this motion. And I urge the mover of the amendment to withdraw the amendment, support the motion. You've said it's in the budget. Let's go on and do the work.
Councillor Rosie.
No, I think that the amendment's got to stand because that states quite clearly that it is going to be scheduled and it will be scheduled to be put in the budget. I mean, that's what it says in the amendment. So I don't see what's wrong with that. That's given the movers of the motion what they want, to give some guarantee that the work is going to go ahead.
Can I ask Mr Sherritt to give us further notice on this? The works that are included in the 2015-16 capital budget, please.
There are works currently going on to the guttering at the school, which is only around about £7,000, but the major works generally are carried out over the summer period because of the health and safety issues that go around with scaffolding and the likes. Having not put it into last year's capital budget, it would be sensible to put it into this year's budget and see that work carried out in the 2015-16 period over the summer holidays.
Thank you. Do you want to sum up for your motion, Councillor Montgomery?
Yeah, I would. Thanks, Provost. Well, I think Mr Sherritt's actually just explained there that it's not actually in the budget yet. So, I mean, you know, that's one of the reasons why the motion was up. The head teacher certainly isn't aware of it, and certainly the correspondence the Parents Association have had. That's quite a lot of it. Doesn't actually state, hasn't had any reply to say that it would be in the budget this year. We'll have to say, to wait to the summer period and understand the issue with scaffolding and all the rest of it. The leaks are there now. This isn't cosmetic. It's been going on. By the time it comes to the summer, it'll be over a year since this building has actually have a leaking roof that's affecting the gym hall, the drama studio, and the music corridor in the top floor. I mean, I'm not actually happy that we had recently had teacher interviews and the applicants were taken round the school to get a look at the building. And they must have been really impressed when they walked along the top corridor and there was buckets of lime of water in it for the school that they're actually wanting to be the head teacher for. It's no good to the youngsters that are there. They're walking along corridors where roof tiles have already collapsed and fallen onto the floor. It's dangerous as it stands at the moment. And really, we need to get this done as soon as possible. If we can't get the full repair done now, and it's going to be in next year's budget, that's fine. I'm not accepting the amendment, by the way. And I think there should be work carried out even more at the moment because the roof tiles are dangerous. They're actually sagging and they're ready to collapse. And I don't know, nobody seems to know what's at the back of them or above them. And the work needs to be done now to make the building safe. And the work needs to be done in the summer if that's when it's going to be for long-term repairs and make sure that the building's actually going to be wind and watertight, which is a basic a basic right of a householder, and it certainly should be a basic right of people going to school. So I'm not accepting the amendment.
Councillor Rosie, do you want to sum up for your amendment?
Sorry, I've summed up as the right to reply. There isn't anybody else comes in. I'm sorry, Provost. I know you're trying your best, right, and you're doing as hard as well as you can. You do not have a right to reply. I have a right to reply. That's it, finished.
Okay, we move to the vote on the amendment, please. Those in favour of the amendment, please show. Those in favour of the motion, please show. The amendment is carried.
Can I ask a question, Provost, really for information?
No,
for myself?
we're finished with that one, Councillor.
No, we're not finished. Okay. I'm asking for information. It says that this is included in the 2015-16 capital budget. Is that actually in, specified yet, or is it going in?
You said you had finished, so you had a chance to question it at the time. You didn't question it.
Or is it going to be put in? That's the question I'm asking. Because the information that was given out is it's going to be put in the budget, isn't it, in yet?
The work will be programmed for the 15-16 calendar year, and if it's not in already, it will be put into the capital plan.
Okay, move to item number 8. Positive destinations and plans for 2015. Developing Midlothian's young workforce. Report by Director of Education, Communities and Economy, Mary Smith. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost. Okay, the purpose of this report is to outline the significant improvements in supporting young people to achieve positive destinations and leaving school. In 2014, the number of young people achieving a positive destination increased by nearly 5% to 93.9%. And this report will highlight key factors which have contributed to this improvement and also the approaches which will be taken to support young people in 2015. Section 2 outlines the background to the Positive Destinations report, and Section 2.2 outlines the performance, both overall improvement and in destinations for our young people. Section 2.3 outlines the actions we will take to build on our progress, and Section 4 summarises the Positive Destinations progress in Midlothian. Section 5 has the recommendations to recognise the improvement in supporting young people to achieve positive destinations, acknowledge, somebody slipped in a word here, and praise the efforts of staff, partners and young people which have resulted in this improvement, approve the ambitious target of achieving 95% positive destinations in 2015 and support the approaches which will be developed further to meet the recommendations contained within the Developing Scotland's Young Workforce, known as the Wood Report. Thank you.
Councillor Constable.
Thank you, Provost. It's really my pleasure today to be in the good part of this meeting. We're recognising some really good news. The Council's made tremendous progress in this, from a very low position up to 7th in the positive destinations for young people. In moving the recommendations, I too especially want to mention the second bullet point, acknowledge and praise the efforts of all the staff and the partners involved in this. It has been a tremendous effort, producing great results. I just have one question for the Director, referring to Section 2.2, at the bottom of page 12, and the bullet point at the bottom there, the percentage of leavers entering higher education was slightly lower than the national average, and I'd like to hear about what steps have been taken to address this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. In Midlothian, we're very proactive in trying to encourage our young people to go to university. So if we start from the very base, we've got Queen Margaret University doing the Children's University now, where youngsters between 9 and 14 do activities towards university and have a graduation. So that's only come into being in the last year. For a number of years, we've had the LEAPS programme in Midlothian, the Lothians Equal Access programme for schools. So that's where our youngsters from our deprived areas go to summer school and whatnot, and have the opportunity to test out and try different things. We've also got the colleges, the youngsters who are now going to college. So this year we've got 83 youngsters who are doing the links with the colleges, and that gives youngsters that bridge between 4th, 5th and 6th year and university, because some young people are not ready to go to university, so they do the HNC at college, which takes them into 2nd year at university. So again, that was last year. So there is a lot going on. We have to raise our young people's aspirations. We have to say to young people, you are, you know, as entitled as any other young person to go to university. So there's a lot of work ongoing, and it's how we encourage that. So that's what we're doing.
Councillor Muirhead.
Thanks. We welcome the progress since 2008-9 as well, and acknowledge the efforts of everybody concerned with achieving these results. There are a number of good aspects to this. It's good that actually that we've managed to account for everybody in the report, which is extremely helpful. There is on page 13, well, the first bullet point there. I take it that 90% is wrong. I'm trying to figure out what that's supposed to mean. The percentage of those going into further education, is that 1%? Is now about 1% below the Scottish-wide figure of 90. I take it that's not correct, but right, okay. I couldn't work it out to be something that was right. There's a few things, you know, there's a drop in training by 1%, but that's more than made up for by the fact there's 5% more going into work. We obviously have to keep working and expanding as much as we can the support that's given, and start to look, I think, into, you know, deeper into it, if you like, in terms of, and I know we've done that to some extent at the seminar, but look at the quality of the jobs that youngsters have gone into, the areas from where they're coming, because these figures of, you know, the high figures of positive destinations, you know, there are how many in each school are going to, you know, what kind of destinations. We need to look at all these things as well. But it is an excellent report. I notice there's nothing in the report about an issue that I raise every time we discuss this subject, and that's what happens after that. You know, what's the second stage, if you like? People going to university and dropping out, or further education and no finishing it, that type of thing as well. I know that there is, from the seminars that we've had in the past, that there is work going on in that area, and you know, whether that needs to be in here or not. But congratulations to all involved. It is a positive report.
Councillor Drink.
Yeah, when we entered in May 2012, I asked where we fitted in all the different categories, and I was horrified, mortified, that attainment was number 31 out of 32. And as a result, we got the Scottish Government to come to our rescue, and they have done quite a lot within Midlothian to help us improve the situation. But I really would like to congratulate the officials, particularly Alistair Mader, who has worked very hard, and to see us go from 31 to 7 is really an amazing achievement. Had we stayed at 31, we would have been morally bankrupt.
Councillor Coventry.
Thanks, Provost. The fact that 93.9% of school leavers in Midlothian now move into a positive destination is without doubt a good news story. Another way of looking at the statistics is to consider that between Christmas 2013 and May 2014, 889 young people left school in Midlothian. Of that number, 835 moved into a positive destination. Every single young person, as was pointed out by Councillor Muirhead, was followed up. Now, when the SNP administration took office in Midlothian in 2012, only 85.4% of school leavers moved into employment, education or training. We have now increased this number by 8.5%, which in anyone's terms is a substantial improvement. Indeed, the fact that Midlothian has moved from 31st position to 7th sends out a clear message that Midlothian offers positivity for families and young people. Now, one of the biggest barriers which faces any young person when they leave school, college or university is a lack of work experience. There's sadly a perception amongst some employers, there's lots of research which points this out, that young people straight from education are not ready for the world of work. Indeed, the Wood report suggests that only 29% of employers recruit young people directly from education. Only 13% recruit apprentices. And that Scotland-wide, only 27% of employers offer work experience placements to S4 pupils. Now, we as a council should acknowledge the hard work, as has been pointed out previously, of Midlothian Council, of the teachers and other professionals, parents and most of all the young people in achieving these excellent figures. I would just like to mention a wee bit about the figures going into higher education. And of course, we always should make sure that we're trying to improve those figures going into higher education. Higher education also includes HNC, HND level. It's not second best to go into university. It's just a different route and a different way of carrying out your studies in preparation for your later on employment. But it's really important that we ensure that people of all ages, so people in their 20s and 30s and older, have routes back into education, because, as was pointed out by the officer, many young people, they're not ready for higher education when they leave school at 16, 17 or 18. So it's vitally important that we ensure that there's lots of opportunities and routes open to these individuals later on in life. The biggest barrier that we'll probably face later on in life will be the economic barrier. So it's something that we as a council and as a country have to be aware of. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, I just want to pick up a couple of points. I mean, I think clearly government have an interest in positive destinations. I think the results here are very much as a result of what we've done locally. It's been the hard work of members of staff in Midlothian Council, the pupils themselves and our schools. But beyond that, positive destinations was very early identified as one of the key priorities for the Community Planning Partnership, and it's through that work and bringing together all the agencies who work in Midlothian, working with Edinburgh College, all that partnership approach of identifying the real focus that was needed to ensure that we were interacting with each and every one of these young people to make sure they had a positive outcome through their education experience. That's been the difference, and that's why we've achieved the position we're in now of being seventh in the table, if you like. I think the ambitious target of 95% is more progress. Ultimately, I think we would all want to get to a situation where it was 100%. And everything will be done to continue to push that. We always want to make more progress. I know Councillor Bryant sat in a meeting and said that he wants to see us at number 1 in terms of positive destinations. So it's certainly not something that any of us can take the foot off the gas and driving forward. I know that there's a real ambition to ensure that there is a positive destination for every pupil, but just wanted to reinforce the sort of that wide partnership and the number of people involved in Midlothian who have managed to make that change and to drive forward the improvement that we see reported here.
Okay. That's a good news report. We accept the recommendations. Thank you. Item 9, the Midfest 2015, a report by Mr Blair, Director of Resources.
Thanks, Provost. The purpose of this report is to update Council on the outcomes following the second Midfest Festival, which was held in Midlothian in last September. The report also outlines the resource implications for 2015 should the event proceed. Section 2 of the papers provides details of the background and, importantly, the key issues arising from the formal event debrief which I chaired. Section 3 of the report provides full commentary on the 2014 event, which essentially covered 3 discrete elements: Grown in Scotland, a music festival; the Family Fun Day, a Sunday community event; and a week-long performance of Midlothian-wide community events. The financial costs associated with promoting such events are as set out in Section 5, and today Council has been asked to consider the funding arrangements should Midfest retain the same format in 2015. The options are listed on page 25 of today's papers, and accordingly Council is invited to consider the recommendations which I've also detailed on page 28 within Section 6 of the report. Thanks, Provost.
Thank you. Councillor Constable.
Thank you, Provost. Again, I've got the privilege of another good news story here. Since this administration started Midfest, the success of the 2013 one was largely due to my colleague, Councillor Beattie, and our business administrator at the time, Rachel Lewis. This has been continued in 2014, and my colleague on my left will doubtless go on about some of the economic benefits it's brought to this county. In the considering recommendation B, I'd like to suggest that we go for option B, introduce an entry fee, as stated there, but also include option C and continue to seek external funding. I think it's been a tremendously positive thing for Midlothian, and I would definitely like to see it continued.
Councillor Bryant.
Yeah, I don't think you can underestimate the economic benefit of the number of visitors that came for Midfest. I mean, the local hostelries were bulging at the seams. There was children having a great time in the streets. And we're talking 68% of the people who attended, who lived out with the area, would come back again. So I hope it continues.
Councillor Muirhead.
If I'm understanding what's being suggested here, we were about to move something similar. Can I just clarify that quite clearly that the suggestion that £30,000 is earmarked from reserves for Midfest is not on the table? Right.
Okay. Are we happy to accept options B and C? Thank you. Item number 10. Approval of nominations for Elizabeth Fields Challenge. A report by Mr Muffet, Head of Commercial Operations.
Thanks, Provost. This is bringing back a number of fields that are being proposed for approval as Queen Elizabeth Fields. The previous report, there were 3 issues noted in terms of bringing it back and looking at some of the other locations, e.g. Roslyn Park, Rosewell and Vogrie Country Park. So that's essentially what this report is doing, and those fields that are being proposed are listed under section 2.2. The one thing that I would point out in the plan of the Polton Hall Park, which is on page 41, it's actually the old plan that's been included, so I apologise for that. The new plan actually refers to the southern boundary, which is contained within the wording under 2.1c. So essentially, moving to the recommendation, Provost, I'd ask Council to confirm the nominations for designation as Queen Elizabeth Fields and approve submission of those applications to Fields and Trust for consideration.
Councillor Rosie.
Yeah, happy to move the recommendations at 4. I just think it's important that we do give some protection to areas such as the gardens, children's play areas, bicycle trails, nature reserves, sports pitches, etc. Because I think we have got to protect them as much as we can for the future, and bear in mind we want to improve general health and well-being in Midlothian. So I think this is important, and as I said, I would recommend that we confirm the nominations and approve the submissions of the applications.
Councillor Milligan.
Thank you. Welcome the report on the Greyhoe Hat Liver. And the one question I have, Ricky, is will that then change the names of these places, like the King George V Parks? They all changed to KGV and playing fields. Will this change for example, Polton Hall Recreation Ground is called Polton Hall Recreation. Will that now be changed to Queen Elizabeth playing fields?
No, my understanding is that there is no name change. They will remain as is.
Councillor Muirhead.
I'm going to ask the Daft Laddie question and be parochial here. I'm interested in the Anderson Park. When we talk about not being able to develop anything, there are no restrictions whatsoever in terms of facilities being put into these places or anything like that. I'm thinking of changing facilities and stuff like that, because I know that there's local interest in doing that in the likes of Anderson Park. There's no restrictions or anything like that at all as a consequence of this.
when we were deliberating these, Councillor, there is a need to go back to the organisation to actually talk about changes. So it's not a question of we want to do this in a park and it just goes ahead. There is a process where we need to consult with them to make sure that what we're proposing fits in with the ethos of what the park is about. So we would need to consult if we were wanting to make fundamental changes.
In that case, can I just get a wee bit of clarity then? Because I know that the local youth clubs that are sitting with over 100 youngsters involved on the football, using the pretty dilapidated AstroTurf, are looking to raise funds to get that surface repaired and potentially extended, and also to put the potential changing facilities in there. Now, Anderson Park is predominantly a play kind of park, that kind of recreational thing, and it's only that relatively small part of it that's actually the playing facility. I would be concerned about including Anderson Park in here if there was any potential issues regarding moving forward with a project like that at this time.
What you have to remember is that the whole ethos behind this is that these parks are a legacy following the events in 2012, and it's about protecting them for the community, for community use. What you've just described there is exactly that, is community use. So we don't envisage that that is an issue that would be problematic going forward. That's our understanding. Yeah.
Okay, we have to accept the recommendations of that report. Thank you. Item number 11, Asset Management Rationalisation Dalkeith Town Centre Feasibility Study. A report by Mr Sherritt, Head of Property and Facilities Management.
Thanks, Provost. This report comes on the back of a council briefing held in October last year, where we set out a possibility of looking at the Dalkeith Town Centre as part of the rationalisation of council properties. I was asked, following that briefing, to come back with a proposal to Council to look at the scope of a feasibility and the cost of such study. This paper sets that out in item 3. It explains that we do need an element of external commercial expertise and development expertise, as well as in-house team that currently work on such matters. Items or sections 3.11 to 3.16 set out the aims and outcomes of the roles necessary to complete the task. Item 4 sets out the programme for delivery of the feasibility study and then the delivery post-approval of that, which takes us right through to 2023 if this was to go ahead. Item 5 sets out the costs, which amount to about £180,000 of fees and costs associated with that work. The risk, and I will spell this risk out, is that should we commit to the money being spent on the feasibility study and it doesn't result in a viable business case, obviously that money is gone and will not be recovered. That said, the recommendation is for Council to note this report and agree to instruct further investigation of that feasibility study and approve the estimate of £180,000 set out in section 5.
Councillor Rossi.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. As Gary has said that this formed part of a briefing that we had earlier on this subject, and I really think that it's quite a sum of money, but without the feasibility study, we're not going to know whether this is a viable proposal or not. And I think if we are going to be serious about improving Dalkeith Town Centre, then I think it is important that we accept the recommendations put forward. Thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, I think obviously some more of the detail on the cost is included within the financial strategy, so certainly supportive of the inclusion. I think the timetable shown at table 2 shows that this isn't simply a quick overnight programme. There's extensive consultation included in that early on. But I think, as Councillor Rossi says, I think many of us have discussed how we take forward the next steps in the regeneration of Dalkeith. There's a fair bit of work already been undertaken. And where that's happened, the town centre is looking good. I think there's always more that could be done, and the programme that's been outlined here would actually let us have that whole-scale look at what does the town want and what can we actually deliver off the back of that. I think the process proposed here makes a lot of sense, and would second Councillor Rosie in moving the recommendations.
Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Provost. I'd like to move an amendment that this council puts this feasibility study on hold for now, and we wait for a better financial position, because obviously we're looking at finances further on in the meeting. We have had many savage cuts to the grants to our voluntary groups, and hiked up costs of community alarms and closing the taxi card scheme to new applicants. Yet we're talking about spending money on this feasibility study. And we have had other town centre regeneration projects which have failed due to finances, and obviously I don't want to see this fail again. But obviously now I'm more positive. I would like to say that once the finances are stable, that we can hold a seminar on what form regeneration would take, how to shape a new town centre with retail and community and leisure facilities. I move.
Councillor Bennett.
Thanks, Chair. I'll support Councillor Russell at this stage. That, and I know this has been bandied about long before I was in the council, about regeneration Dalkeith Town Centre, and to some extent a lot of work has been done. But I would certainly at this stage request a seminar and we put the decision on hold, because what I'm concerned about is that the party referring to new council headquarters, I didn't think that's relevant at this time. That's no meaning to say that in the future you're going to need it. But at this time, when, as Margot says, we're making these cuts to taxi cards for people with disabilities and alarms, we're going to spend £180,000 in a feasibility study, including new council headquarters. Now, there's spaces here, I don't think you need to expand, but like say, the land next to the council buildings, if you want to look at the question of the library and the arts centre and things like that, there is land that we've got that could be developed. And in the longer term, what would go in their place? Is there a scope for mere retail? Because I believe in the past there was consultation with, like, say, Next and other retail companies, and they just walked away. They weren't interested in the redevelopment of Dalkeith Town Centre. So I would like a seminar, put this decision on hold, and fully discuss all the implications, because we just can't brush this out in 5 minutes, Chair. That's what I would second Margot in that.
Councillor Milligan.
Joe, thank you. It's mere some questions really, and probably for Gary or any Gary's team. I mean, at the seminar back in October, Gary, there was, I think, quite a few questions of what was in and what was you, what they, you know, how brave we were going to be in looking at this. And there didn't seem to be, I feel, a clear answer in what was on the melting pot and what wasn't. And I didn't think we quite got round that. There was also quite a bit of discussion, and I had it with yourself, I've also had it with Ian Johnson, head of planning, about, you know, would it be better to put a planning brief or a planning brief outline together to go out with this, because the last thing we want to do is to take on consultants to do this, and we've been here twice, maybe 3 times before, where you're bringing in consultants and they're looking at the bigger picture, and what they put down quite simply isn't acceptable to planners. And it was just to sort of get an idea for you in that. I mean, in the purpose of the report, it talks about the purpose of this report is to quantify the cost of a feasibility study regarding the regeneration of Dalkeith Town Centre and to provide a programme overview. However, the recommendations talk about mainly this being about a new council at HQ with some leisure facilities like the library and art centre that will go in that as well. And 2.2 in the report, Gary, we talk about Midlothian Council has significant presence in the centre. Everybody can read what 2.2 says, so I'll not go through it word for word. But it's in there it says intention is to consolidate these assets and to acquire others through compulsory purchase. It would be handy to know what ones we're talking about requiring through compulsory purchase and that, just to make sure that there's a political will to acquire these buildings before we hand out a carte blanche to a consultant to go out there, because a lot of people think, well, for example, if you're staying in a flat in Dalkeith and we take your flat away, we knock it down and we rebuild it, you'll be handed one of the new ones. No, how it works, Gary, is you fine well know there's a set amount of money, somebody comes in and does a valuation, and that's how much folk get. And I think elected members need to be exactly clear on what's been suggested. So I think some further meetings and discussions before spending this money would be helpful, and we're only trying to not be helpful, but I think it would to make sure we're doing something here, and as everybody knows, I've been very clear. I mean, the sky's the limit for me in town centre areas, and I think the more we can do, the more we can get in, the more businesses we can bring in and get on board at the time, then the better this will do. The less it costs the taxpayer, and the better it is for Dalkeith.
Mr. Sherritt.
Yeah, I think at the briefing we did explore that and looked at whether being bold and brave was the right answer, and I think the outcome was that we would go away and put this back to the feasibility study. Now, the estates consultant that I've outlined in 3.15 is there precisely to do that and see if we were to be bold and brave, were we going to get the product filled. So there's no point in building something that was never actually going to generate an interest from the marketplace. So that was the specific reason for bringing them in. Absolutely not limited to the items listed at the new headquarters, library, art centre and contact centre. That was the intention was to include them within, not just limited to that, and then see what else could be built into the new centre there. In terms of compulsory purchase, absolutely as you've outlined, compulsory purchase creates a value for a purchase that is then purchased and not necessarily just transferred into a new property. So it would be a case of valuing it, handing that money over to buy the property from the individual, and they would then have to take the money that they've received and put that towards the purchase of another one.
Councillor Brown.
Yeah, I think we have to be brave. I mean, at what point are we going to look at the centre and say something has to be done? I mean, it's getting worse, and people I speak to are pretty depressed with the whole area. And I don't agree with the amendment. I think we should spend the money, and I think we should be very brave. Let's build something that's remarkable. Because what has happened before in England, for example, it regenerates the whole town. It gets things moving. Why don't we have shops down the bottom and council offices above? Maybe some flats as well. I think we should be very brave.
Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, I have to come back on a couple of the points that were brought up. I mean, surely the whole point of the feasibility study is to look at what we can do. I mean, we're asking about what's going to be in and what's going to be out here. I mean, that's what comes through a feasibility study, and that's why we need to do that now. I don't know who it was that said it, but if not now, when? I mean, are we going to wait till 2023 before you want us to put in a feasibility study? We hear from the current UK government that they were only, 40% of the way through the cuts that they're going to continue putting forward. Ed Balls has told us that Labour are going to keep the cuts agenda, that if Labour get in as the next government. So it's certainly not going to be in the next 5-10 years before we're seeing the rosy environment that Councillor Russell and Bennett seem to want us to wait for. So are we going to wait till 2027 before we're starting to look at maybe doing a feasibility study? 2030? I mean, when? Is there ever a right time? I think we've got an ambition in the council. It came a very clear message to me, came through the message that people want to see something done. I think by going forward with the feasibility study now, it lets us to pull together the information. You can see in table 2.1 there's a 5-month consultation process included in that, so we can find out what's wanted. We get the information together, and at the end of the year come back to council to say, right, are we moving on with this? It's not let's do this next year. This is a long-term project that would genuinely and fully help to restore the town centre of Dalkeith, and it's crying out for it. And why on earth would we not want to move forward with that?
Councillor Milligan.
Yeah, I think what Councillor Russell was talking about was people seeing us spending money on new council buildings under this current feasible stuff, nothing to do with the town centre stuff. But by the way, we're very realistic. If somebody can come back and say, well, it's financially viable to do this, or by putting it in with this package, it saves the taxpayer a fortune, then that's what I'm saying. But I do think, Owen, it would be good to sort of, before we go out, is to sit down and sort of see, well, you know, what are we going to go with? What is there? And what parts are in and what parts are completely out. And I ken you're saying there that if you go out there to them, the consultants will definitely come back with whatever Gary and I give them a nod to come back with, if that's in or no. The fact of the matter is, I've been here, done it and played the tune 100 times, as to when we get to the very end of the line and then the guys that are asked to deliver it turn around and say, oh, and by the way, we need that big chunk of land there as well, or this doesn't work, or we're away. And that's twice already I've been here when it's happened, and that's why I think it would be good to have a clear indication along with us for planners as to what they would accept.
Councillor Constable.
I think we're in a chicken and egg and a horse and cart situation here. I agree we should have a seminar, but the seminar should come after the feasibility study so we can see what is possible.
Would you care to sum up, Councillor Russell?
Thank you, Provost. I obviously hear what everyone says, but I still recall the time we went through this before with the Dalkeith regeneration. And as Councillor Milligan said, that there was talk to all the residents in the area in Janmat Court. They had been all given assurances that their values or their houses would be okay. And for a few years after it, people were still asking me what's happening with the Dalkeith Town Centre, when sadly it had fell on itself because all the developers walked away for reasons that Councillor Milligan alluded to, that they were wanting things that we couldn't give them. And I think that's what I kind of worry with this feasibility study. We're spending, the risks in here are saying that it might outweigh the benefit of a feasibility study, and then we may still not get what you're wanting. And we've already spent that money when the voluntary organisations that we all know and represent are struggling to keep going. And our older people are having to pay more for their alarms, etc. So that's kind of where I come from.
Councillor Rosie, what to sum up?
Yeah, I think we're at a point now where if we don't do it now, I can't see when it ever will happen, to be honest, in the financial climate. So I think it's something we've got to, if we're wanting to do it and we're serious about it, then I think it's got to be done now. Otherwise, I think you can forget it. It will just deteriorate.
Okay, we now move to the vote on the amendment from Councillor Russell that we postpone this and have a seminar. Those in favour of the amendment, please show. Those in favour of the recommendations, please show. Thank you. They're carried. Thank you. Item number 12. Sign up to Scotland's Digital Participation Charter. A report by Evelyn McHugh, Joint Director Health and Social Care. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost. This report is seeking Council approval to take part in the Digital Participation programme. It's a national programme that's coordinated by SCVO, and it's looking for participating organisations not just to sign up to a charter but also to actively work to promote digital inclusion for all its citizens. We know in Midlothian from the work that we're doing locally that 15% of our population have no interest in going online or taking part in any digital activity. The concern is that that 15% will get left behind as services become more and more orientated to using digital means. There's already a lot of work going on locally in targeting that 15%. We've got the Volunteer Centre working with our older people. We've got CLD working and providing courses, etc. And we've also got a pilot happening up in Gorbridge Library. So this participation on the part of the Council is really about strengthening and continuing the work of the Council in this area. Council's asked to consider the recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, I think clearly there's a very positive side to this in which we are able to engage people in new and exciting ways. We always have to be careful that some aren't left behind, but I know Councillor Johnson is going to touch on ways in which we're managing that. I think the recommendations speak to themselves, and I'll be brief in my comments and keep them into that.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you. The pilot in Gorbridge is really gearing folk up to get ready for the forced changes introduced by the UK Government in respect to welfare reform, and make sure nobody's left behind in maximising their benefit and income opportunities. And then it will be going forward to do library lending, paying rent and council tax, in effect covering activities that are currently achieved by application forms or face-to-face situations. And there's loads of folk in our communities who haven't got direct personal home computer access, and so this pilot is supporting that access and helping folk develop the skills they need in relation to computers and other IT equipment. And after the pilot's run its course and been evaluated and reviewed, it will be rolled out across the other locations in Midlothian. So this pilot is really to be welcomed, and it's currently being funded by the Scottish Government.
Okay. Councillor Muirhead.
Yeah, it indicates, obviously, we do need to focus a lot of effort on the 15% who are not interested and try and persuade them to make that kind of shift. But it almost by default suggests that the other 85% are using other services, which quite clearly isn't the case. Where are we in terms of the channel shift as far as the council, for instance, is concerned? I realise this is wider than that and it's all government services, but where are we in terms of because we're relying on the savings that we make from the 85% accessing our services online to fund the work that we're doing with the 15%, so it's something that's quite important.
Much of the work that's going on at the moment is funded from other sources, like the work with older people is funded from the Change Fund. So there's quite a bit of diversity out there in terms of the range of funding. But obviously the intention is, as we go forward, the customer services review is ongoing and is looking at that shift and is developing plans around the shift from face-to-face. There's a pilot planned for Mayfield as well in relation to the library there, in terms of making more, using libraries in particular to make council services much more accessible. And it's about supporting people to use the computers that are there to make contact and to contact the council online. So that work is ongoing and it's been overseen by the customer services review at the moment.
Are we now in any kind of position to give us any kind of update in terms of where we are, though, with our channel shift? Owen and I served on the web board for a while. That's not met for a long, long time. It probably doesn't exist now. But we did get regular updates at that time. It was all about channel shift. I just wondered if it was possible to give some information on where we are with that.
If I can speak to that, Provost. Certainly we've been doing work, as the Director indicates, about the customer profiling an insight across the county, which was largely taken account of those services where we do have contact through revenues, housing, social work services, and developing those characteristics, what would previously be known as archetypes, ABC 1s, 2s, 3s, as members may be familiar with from work that has been done previously by some of my predecessors in this particular field. So certainly we've been compiling that, looking at what is the most appropriate channel for the most appropriate delivery of services. It may be beneficial that we could speak to each of the groups individually regarding that, or indeed a seminar if that's minded by the members. But certainly we have the customer services strategy developed, which is what is informing the Insight project, and in turn will lead us to channel shift. It's not all about going online necessarily, because we appreciate vulnerabilities and particular client groups that's not going to be appropriate for, but there's a host of work that's already going on in terms of payments online, payments through texting services, and it's developing a lot more of that, both in terms of applications online, as members have referenced, and payments and accessing services. The library, as we see, as being customer contact points to supplement the library work that goes on, because there's a lot of early years and book work that goes on in terms of preventative work and collaboration there with other services like citizens' advice, prospects for health services are being looked at through health and social care integration as well. So there's a whole range of work, clearly, that we're able to brief members about offline.
That'd be helpful offline, because I understand, I'm putting you on the spot here. I'm not really expecting you to have that information. It would be helpful if we could get it, because I know that we collect it on the basis of the information that I've had in the past. That's fine. Thanks.
Okay, we're happy to move on now. Right, colleagues, I intend calling a comfort break, 10 minutes or so. Okay, thank you.